Hani Bojo, Wabanakwa Dishnakas, Makwa Chichak Dodam, Aki Dunjaba, Chippewa, Anishinaabe, and my name is Grey Cloud, and I am of the Bear and Crane clan. Oddly enough, my government name is James Carpenter. In a part of my introduction, I also shared that, right now, Earth is my home. I'm a full-blooded Indian, they say. Come from a few different tribes. One of the nations or homelands that I call is Chippewa of the Thames, located in southern Ontario, and also Alderville First Nation, located in southern Ontario. And the gentleman that raised me, which I call part of my home as well, was from Attawapisket, northern Ontario. If we know that area where I shared where I come from, Chippewa of the Thames, Alderville First Nation, and up in Cree territory in northern Ontario, I've seen the impacts and I've seen the devastation of, what my elders taught me. Almost a complete genocide of our people, of our community. As far as identifying myself as an Indigenous person, as a First Nations citizen, our family has always called these lands and territories under the title of Canada our home. Some of the first residential schools that were, I guess, for, of course, the assimilation and colonization of so many different nations within this country. A lot of those first policies, government policies, procedures, have directly impacted myself and my family as we've had our own experiences with, I guess, this government policy towards Indigenous peoples. I had the privilege at the time, many years ago, learning from our elders, learning from our medicine people, learning from our Indigenous traditional healers about things that they didn't share with us in schools when I was growing up. I had often wondered to myself about this sense of belonging, this sense of pride about being First Nations. This was, of course, shared from my family. There was a real sense of pride, a real sense of home, and a real sense of community. Prior to, the public apology that was given by the Government of Canada, following that, I still seen and didn't understand the disparity of what was happening to our families and our beautiful people. I often wondered many, many times, why is our community in such a disarray of bad health? Why are we struggling to survive? Even though our people, our communities, our families have lived, walked, harvested, shared, and cared for the land for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. How did and why did our way of life so abruptly come to an end? When I was growing up in an urban center, in an urban city, we'd often go and visit what we call our homes, also known as First Nation reserves. And I often wondered, with speaking with family, with my own family, I would think to myself in a very spiritual way, what has happened to my people? Every one of us has been impacted by government policies, procedures. To understand what the TRC is and all the recommendations, the calls to action, my friends, there are so many individuals like myself, even grandfathers and grandmothers, our parents, our aunties, our uncles, that didn't grow up with the words being shared to them, I love you. And it's not because our families or communities didn't have those words to share. A lot of that sacred love, that sacred connection was broken through the residential schools. And I want to share with you so you really have an understanding of this, because this is still going on and it's 10 years after some of these recommendations have been made. with some progress, with some being stalled. These 94 calls to action. Understand what it's done. Understand the truth. I was adopted at birth. My Indigenous mother was very young, and her just being visibly Indigenous in the London, Ontario region, when she was giving birth, she was flagged. She was flagged as, number one, not that she was a young mother. She was flagged just because she was visibly Indigenous. That led, of course, into a series of policies. So at birth, I was apprehended by the government. So what that meant is I've been taken away from my home, from my family, based on policy. My mom, who raised me, is a full-blooded Indigenous woman, and she's seen this young woman, and she befriended her, and she said, "We'll help you." So even though I was apprehended at birth, I was raised in an Indigenous family, and only because of that government policy, I grew up knowing my biological mother to be my aunt. So when I got a little older and started realizing that this physical appearance of mine is much different than the people who had raised me, that's when I was shared that truth. Where did this begin? The government enforced policy with some helpers of the church to break our spirit. They said to kill anything Indigenous within us. My elder taught me this before the Prime Minister of Canada at the time, Stephen Harper, made that public apology with a little bit of a smile. I had heard those words from our leaders. So many years later, when that public apology came out, I remember the elder that shared this with me, that said it was to kill the Indigenous within us. He said they almost succeeded. And he looked at me as a young man and he said, Grey Cloud, it's time for you to walk a different path, to learn and pick up all these things that you told me our culture was. He said, so that we can relearn that culture, relearn our identity, so that we can take care of our children, so that we can have a say based on agreements that were made prior to Confederation. And my elder taught me this, and I want to share his words. He learned it from his elder, and his elder learned it from a title of a book that made so much more truth for our Indigenous people. We are strangers on our own land. That's the one thing about us that we never could understand. Reservation lands. Some of these First Nation reserves all across the country that are recognized as a First Nation land. Ceded or unceded, some of them. I want you to think of that word, reservation lands. Reservation lands, at the time our people were being forced, spread out, taken away from their communities, taken away from the areas all around the Great Lakes, and placed on reserved lands, reserved for culture, ceremony, harvesting, and community. The funny part is those reserved lands were never supposed to be lived on. They were just for harvesting, hunting, and community. Protected lands, let's say. So imagine, let's go into this story now of this truth from a time over here. Imagine you take all the children away from your community. Take every single one of them away, just in your community, your family, and your friends. When there's people wearing some official clothing, they come knock on your door, and they don't necessarily give you a choice. They send you off to a school. So now you're back at home, in your community, on land the government said you must live on, with all the kids gone. What purpose can a grandmother or grandpa have, or a mom and dad, or an aunt or an uncle? There's no children around. When the children returned, for those that did return, they often stay quiet. This man here spoke 4 languages. His first language being Cree, his second language being OG Cree, his third language being Ojibwe, 5 languages, his fourth language being French, and his fifth language being English. This man is homeless. And that's all we might see. Oh, that man's homeless. There must be something wrong with his head. There must be something wrong with his spirit. There must be something wrong with his family. This is the man who raised me. This is my father. A full-blooded Cree man from Attawapiskat First Nation. My dad was one of the oldest, along with some of his brothers. They escaped the residential schools for a time, but then someone known as the Indian agent found them, took them from that trap line where they lived in a steel shack for 20 years. I often wondered why I seen him crying. I often wondered why I seen him so upset. For growing up, I hated alcohol, but he was just a young man, and his sadness was too overwhelming of what he must have experienced, things that he didn't share with us. One thing that he found is some employment, some income. He became a truck driver. But the effects, the reason why those calls to action were put in place was to try to heal some of this. Reservation lands, at the time our people were being forced, treaties between indigenous nations and the crown were to stop the potential fight that we would have had. Our communities and people never had that idea of ownership of land. Please don't let these recommendations just sit on the shelf. Take them to heart. Support an indigenous community. Support an indigenous friendship center. Support your local powwow. Or you know what a real land acknowledgement is to me? It's when you step outside your home, wherever your nest is. You breathe that air. You say, Miigwech, thank you, air. And then you step down onto the ground with your feet. You say, oh, Miigwech, Mother Earth. Thank you, Mother Earth. Then you have your tea or your water or your medicine. You say, oh, thank you. Love you, appreciate you. And then an important part is to help honor the ancestors of my people. And you share that. I want to honor this land, this territory, these waters, this air that has been shared by indigenous nations for thousands of years. I honor your spirit. That's a real land acknowledgement. One that has heart, one that has connection. Every indigenous person wants the best for everybody. This is instilled in us. It's in our identity. We want your family to be well. And I think that's the sacred part of this agreement, that we and you and me are all treaty people in a treaty relationship. And please tell the people that you love them every day. Our families are just healing this now. Indigenous families are saying it more often. We're healing, we're on that path to wellness. I say Miigwech, a gift from my spirit to yours. Miigwech for sharing, listening, hearing a little bit of my story, not the full story of everyone, just a little bit of mine.